All right, well, let's get started. So, for this week, I wanted you guys to go over these three chapters, including the class notes, and also look at the webinars. I had some questions from people were that do we need to look at both the 2011 and 2012 links? And the answer is yes, because the 2012 is really just a supplement to the 2011. It's mostly based on questions that you guys asked, so it doesn't cover everything. That's why there's a lot more links for 2011, because that covers all three of those, or all those chapters, all that material up there. So yes, do this week looks like it's a little short. There's only a few YouTubes, so we'll probably be a short class tonight. I received three questions from, or actually a little more. It looks like four questions from people. So I'll go over those, and then I'll take new questions from anyone who's got questions. First one is enum often used in real-world database designs, or is it more often a lookup table over enum? And it does not appear it's a SQL standard, so portability could be an issue. I very rarely use it actually. I find myself using an int or a lookup table, like an int with a primary key from a lookup table when we store it. So actually, yeah, I don't actually use enum very well. As far as whether it's an ANSI standard or not, it's a good question. I don't think it is. And I'm trying to think Oracle, if Oracle has it. I don't think Oracle does. I remember I taught Oracle years ago, and I don't really remember using it, but I don't use it much. Period. I don't think Oracle has it, so it probably is not an ANSI standard. Um, I do think it's probably a good choice for small amounts of data, as your comment says. But the problem is it's not well known, I don't think, and not well used, and it probably isn't an ANSI standard. So it probably is best to try and avoid enum. You can do with an int, a small int, or whatever, anything you can do with an enum anyway. So there's no real great reason to use it. Next one. Why must a table consist of one column but not one row? There's something special about a column in MySQL. There's nothing special about a column in MySQL or any other database, but you don't really have a table without at least one column. It's almost like saying, if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, did it make a sound? You don't have a table. A table is a collection of columns. So if you don't have at least one column, you don't have a table. And you don't really need a row because when you first create a table, it doesn't have any data. Each row indicates another, another value or another row or another object into that table. The table generally represents some sort of object, person, place, or thing. So, yeah, if you don't have um, the column, then you don't have a table. So there's nothing really. There's no reason. You need at least one column in order to start adding rows, right? Because you can't add rows if you've got nothing to put the data into, and if you've got no columns, there's nothing to put it into. So yeah, that's why you have to have at least one column, and typically you can have way more than one column, but and you never have data until you start adding stuff. The columns really represent what does the structure look like. So, for example, that if you're going to create a table for your employees, you're going to need certain things. You have to have their name, their address, their social security number, their date of birth, and some other things. You need columns for all that stuff. You create that, and then initially you have no data until you start hiring people. And then you start inserting rows into that employee table. So the columns have to come first. Otherwise, there's no data to put in there, or nowhere to put the data. And let's see, the next one too. How do you want us to make the ER table for the lab assignment? With commands in MySQL, or like a diagram example? Actually, I wanted both. That's a good question. I thought the lab assignment said to do both. Let me take a look at it. Um, think about a design. Well, yeah, write and turn in the create table commands to create the above tables and relationships. Yeah, I actually want both. So if you look at this thing right here, this has both. It's got the actual ER diagram, and then it's got the create table commands underneath it. So I really want both. I want you to give me an ER diagram, and I want to see the create table commands. Okay, so that was pretty much that. Um, does anyone have any questions on the lecture? One to many. What about them? What's the question on them, Brad? Yeah, if you've got it written down in paper, you can scan it and email. You know, most scanners will save something as a PDF. Well, the ER diagram will show the relationships. That's what the ER diagram does. It shows those relationships. The arrows. Um, let's see. The way I did it was with a pointer because I did that in Visio. But the actual, in reality, let me show you what they look like. I'm going to Paint. See if I can write this out somehow. See if what my writing is like. In reality, a one-to-many relationship typically looks like that. um, and this means that it's required. If there were a zero, that would mean it's not required. And then so you'd have one table, and I'll just make something that looks like a table over here, and another table over here, and that's kind of the way it would look normally. Um, and again, this might be um, the encounters or the patient visits table. So this might be your visit table, and this might be the patient table. And so we'd say the patient has one too many visits, right? And these are the symbols we typically would use for ER diagrams. The tool I created this with just didn't have that functionality, so I used this. So, typically where you see these arrows would be that would be this thing right here. Typically, that's the way it would go. That answer your question, Brad? Oh, okay, just so you don't need to sign in attendance. There's no attendance for this week. You should watch the videos from last week, though. They're important. Yeah, if you only gave the create table commands, because the lab was not specific. I'll update the lab, but yeah, don't worry about it. Go ahead and submit in the ER diagram as well. I won't take any points off for being late. Okay. This is typical notation right here for one to many. Over here it's one. The slash straight through does not mean. Oh, actually, the slash straight through does mean one. I'm sorry. It does. There should be a second slash through here. Oops. There should be a second slash through here. So the slash, the first slash means it's one. The second slash means it's required. And then the zero and the triangular three thing means it's one too many.